Hey y'all, Fred here. Thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to take a look at the Vosteed Corgi. This is not a new knife for them. They've had this out in some variation or several variations for about a year now, but it is a new knife to me. So I wanted to check it out. Thanks to the folks over at Vosteed for sending this to me for a review. I've been interested in this thing. You know, this is one of those knives that the first time I saw it, I thought it was too small. And I think maybe I saw the Corgi Pup, which is the smaller version. They now actually have a new smaller version called the Corgi V. We'll talk about those in just a little bit. But when I first saw it, I thought, well, you know, I'm not a small knife guy. Y'all know me. I don't have really any, not that I don't like them or don't think that they're cool or anything. I just haven't personally taken an interest in them, I guess, yet. So when I first saw this, I thought, well, that's just a small version of a knife. And so I wasn't all that interested until I realized they have kind of a full-size version of the Corgi. So this has been ongoing. It's been obviously a good knife for them. It has sold continuously, and they still have, I think if you go online, their website right now, they have 18 different variations of this thing. So I thought, yeah, I would love to check this thing out and see what it's all about. You know, if you've been following kind of the affordable EDC knife category for any time now, you'll know that over the last few years, really the big kind of dominant players in this part of the market, it's mostly been 𝗬𝗑𝘃 and 𝗏𝗏𝗏. CJRB has come on pretty strong here lately with all their pyrites and such. But I'm going to tell you what, and I know a lot of y'all agree because y'all have said this to me in the comments below. Over the last 6 months or so, Vosteed has become probably the one to beat in this category, in my opinion. And here's a fun fact. I didn't even realize Vosteed just started selling knives back in 2021. I figure, you know, to me, it feels like, well, these guys have just been around doing this forever. But man, in the last even 6 months or so, they have a designer over there. His name is Yue Dong, and I'm going to put that up on the screen just so that there's no confusions about that. But Yue is one of their in-house designers. He's been there, I don't know, maybe since the beginning. He went to University of Oklahoma, so he's a Sooners fan. But he's been putting out designs through Vosteed for a while. Some of his designs include the Porcupine, which is a new one of my favorite EDC knives, as well as some others that you probably will recognize, like the Raccoon, the Martin, the Shilling Cutter, the Nightshade, the Acorn, the Hedgehog, all kinds of their knives that have really been taken, like this part of the market, by storm. And this Corgi as well. But he doesn't just design knives, he also designs lock mechanisms. That's one of his little hobbies over there. So he's the guy who's created their Vanchor lock, as well as the lock in this that most people seem to be overlooking. Yes, it is a button lock, a button actuated, you know, plunger style lock, but this is a totally different type of lock. They call it the Trek lock, and it's a new variation on the button lock. So we're actually going to take this knife apart and show you what's inside and how this Trek lock works. So, all right, before we get any deeper, if you would please, down below here, as always, hit that subscribe notification bell if you're not already subscribed. I love chatting with you guys. The notification bell just really helps little guys like me get found on the YouTubes. Throw me a thumbs up if you think, you know, I did an okay job. Thumbs down. Let me know what you want to see different. Let's take a look at the box first and what comes in it. I always like to show you guys what comes in the box. Sometimes it's cool stuff. We all like to get the cool stuff in the box, right? So this does include all the normal cool stuff. You've got their support card there. Got a new little sticker guy here. You've got their pamphlet and warranty there. Nice little pouches. I like them with the little Velcro sticker there, the Vosteed Acorn. You got typical orange. I like the orange in here. I love the way that contrasts. Easy to find stuff in there. Plastic, and of course you get the cloth, the microfiber cloth. So that's what you get in the box, all standard fare. Let's take a look at some size comps. Again, I thought that, sorry, I got my desk here dirty, y'all. Sorry, I'm a little bit, you know, anal about that. I hate having all that junk on here. Let's do some size comps because it's hard to get. And again, when I first saw these knives, I thought, well, that's just a little smaller than I'm used to or care for. So let's take a look at it up against the PM2 and the Para 3. You can see this is very much a Para 3 size knife, which is, you know, one of the most popular EDC size knives in the world, right? How about the 𝗬𝗑𝘃𝗁𝗏 Vision and the Pyrite Light. This is the regular size Pyrite Light. You can see it's a little bit smaller than both of these knives as well. That may give you size. How about, again, we looked a second ago at some of Vosteed's own knives, the Acorn, which is now becoming their new rock star. Got a review on this knife coming up soon, and it's very close to the same length as the porcupine, which to me is, I know that the raccoon seems to be getting all the attention and all the variations, but this new porcupine, I already did the review on this. Y'all can check that out if you want. Man, this has so much going for it. I love this as an EDC knife. At any rate, there you go. There, give you a little sense of the size. Let's talk about the specs. I'll pull those up down the side of the screen here. Full open, this thing is 7.17 inches. The blade is 2.99 inches, which should get you legal in most states. The actual cutting edge on this thing is about 2.9 inches closed, just a little under 4.25 inches long. It's just under a half an inch thick, and this is a stone-washed and blasted blade. So I first saw this, I thought, well, that almost looks like a blade coating. When you look at what the satin finish blades look like from Vosteed, you look at this one and say, and that's how I got these together, and I'm like, this almost looks like it's coated. So let me see if I can zoom us in here a little bit to get a nice up close on this. This is actually a stone-washed blade, and you almost have to get it in the right light. You can see there from that angle, now it's starting to look like a stone-washed blade, right? But then they must have bead blasted it or something else, because most of the stone-washed blades that I've seen are definitely darker and have a little bit more speckled colors to them. At any rate, this is a stone wash, almost full flat. Micarta handles, you probably were able to see that from the up close there as well. 14C28N, great steel. They rate this at 60 plus or minus 2. So I definitely can handle 60 and anywhere up to the plus 2. Not a big fan if it goes down to minus 2, down to a 58. Even if 59 is getting a little bit soft. This is, being an uncoated blade, going to be getting you up to the higher end of that. They do have a lot of coated blades. Just be aware that's probably going to knock a point off of your HRC scores. So there you go for that. Lightweight, 3.32 is what they call it. Mine came in at 3.49, just 3.5 ounces. Still very easy to carry. It is a button/Trek lock. So they call this their Trek lock. That's what I mentioned earlier. We're going to open it up, take a look. The designer is Yue Dong. Again, $59 will get one of these things in your pocket today. I will put a link down below to where you can find these on Amazon. That is an affiliate link. Certainly helps me out if you want to pick one up. Thanks so much. Behind the edge, I always like to get behind the edge on these things and measure them. 14 thousandths, which actually was shocking. We'll take a closer look at the blade and all the features here in just a second. But nice, thin, slicey blade, right? 118 thousandths starting out is not too bad at all. So I'll take 14 thousandths all day long. Let's take a little bit of a closer look here. The big thing with this knife is probably obvious on first glance. This is a perfectly symmetrical knife. And so that alone is going to appeal to a lot of people. There are a lot of people out there who love symmetry just in terms of the design aesthetic. And that feature alone, even the blade itself. So I actually traced it out. There's a bit of a false swedge that makes this thing look a little differently shaped at first glance, but you can see it right here. This is almost a perfectly symmetrical spear point blade. Now they call it a drop point, but it's almost, that's about as symmetrical as a knife gets, y'all, right? I mean, front and back. So that's a pretty cool thing, and that's really the big thing about this knife. This knife is not designed to be a hard use work knife, and that's okay. Not every knife needs to be a hard use work kind of knife. This is the kind of knife you throw in your pocket if you're going out maybe on a date night. This is excellent knife for work. If you had that laying on your desk, Susie in the cubicle next to you, who's a bit of a snowflake and thinks you're some kind of wild outdoor survivalist prepper dude, would probably not even understand this was a knife if she looked at it sitting on your desk. They probably would think maybe that's some kind of funky looking flashlight or something that you've got there. Very non-threatening, even open, it could almost pass as a letter opener. So that's the kind of knife this is. If you're going to places or going to be around people who might get a little nervous if you pulled out, a little bit more of an aggressive, scary looking knife, they might have second thoughts about that. That's not what this is. This is perfect for all of those type of situations. The micarta scales on these things, man, I love this micarta. This is kind of the semi-finished. I don't even want to use that term, where it's the grippy version of the micarta, right? So by comparison, the porcupine, which again, I love, is also micarta, but you can clearly see the difference in texture. This is very sanded, polished, smooth micarta. A lot of people will say this is a higher quality of micarta. They may be right about that, but as far as a pocket knife goes, I like the grippier micarta like this. This wears well. You know, it'll absorb oils. It doesn't get cold in these cold wintertime temperatures. And it maintains that nice grippy wet or dry. So for me, the micarta is absolutely a winner. It does have steel liners, obviously. You probably saw that. They are nice and flush with the micarta scales. They do have pretty good holes inside here. You can see them both top and bottom. There are holes in that blade for weight reduction. We'll see that in a minute. That gives this a very solid feeling in the hand. Hardware are T8s on the pivot and the rear end screws, T6s on the pocket clip. I think there might be another T6 or 2 on the inside. We'll see there. Pocket clip is actually really good. This is, you know, Vosteed has a good pocket clip. You can see it's plenty high enough. The screws are all countersunk into the scales, so there's nothing to snag. It has the right amount of springiness, not too much, not too little. That bill is just about as good as you're going to get for a pocket clip bill. It doesn't really end up in too much of a hot spot. So we'll look at that when we get to the cut testing as well, which is not in this video, but you know, coming up soon, we'll do some cut testing. So really good and fully reversible. You probably noticed insert filler tabs there. Very nice on the other side. Of course, this is excellent knife for lefties as well as righties, because you know, lefties can flip that thing out. Well, most can, mine can't, and use that button lock just as easy as a right-handed guy. So well done on that. Copper inserts. So this is almost like a big pivot type collar, but it's on both sides here. So as I mentioned, there's about 18 different versions of this knife, and many of them G10 as well as micarta. There's actually a copper one as well, which is a couple ounces heavier. And it's almost dark washed. So when you first look at it, you wouldn't even maybe recognize that it's copper. It's almost blackened with just little bits of the copper showing through some grind lines. Anyhow, these are copper inserts. Some of them also come with brass. Some of them are titanium. I love this color pattern. On this knife like this, the black micarta with the copper inserts, very classy. Even with the steel screws and pocket clips, to me, all the way around, that is a winner. This is a captive pivot. You can probably see on this side. So let's take a little bit of a closer look here, because I really want to show you some of the detail that they have in this knife, which is a bit surprising at this price point for these knives. Look at how they did this pivot collar, or the pivot screw, the captive side of this pivot screw, but they also did that same kind of cutaway, almost three-sided around that screw. They didn't need to do that. From a distance, you probably can't even see that, but that's a detail, as is the checkered pattern in this button, which actually lends to the perfect amount of grippiness without being sharp in any way. You're not going to slide off that button. You're going to hit it nice and solid every time. So there's some like tiny details, and that's part of this whole reason why Vosteed is becoming the one to beat. They're not just building cool designs. They're actually building good quality into these knives, especially, again, at this price point. There is no stop pins on the outside that you can see. Everything rides inside that blade tang in there, right? So that's why I want to take it apart, so you can see the stop pins in there, how the plunger works. Even the plunger is all totally inside of that blade tang. So that's all part of that Trek lock that they've got designed here. Minimal but decent enough sharpening choil here on the blade. You can see that's not really too big. They did a pretty good job with the plunge line on the grind. Let me see if I can get a little pointer here. So it's going to end right about there. You can pretty much see that in the light right here. You're definitely going to easily get at least 1 or 2 sharpenings. If you want to reprofile the blade, you still will get at least 1 or 2 if you're just sharpening or touching up the existing angle on it, which I think is probably a higher angle. Maybe a 24 degree would be my guess based on the height of that grind line there. you'll easily get 3 or 4 sharpenings probably if you're just maintaining that same edge angle on it. So decent but minimal. It does exist, not too bad. There is a solid lockup on this thing. There's no, back and forth, up or down. There's no pivot lash here. I can't really tell you if there's any detent lash because once it's locked in, you can't get to the blade. That's another cool feature of it. The blade completely hides within the handle of the knife. So I have no idea how the detent lash is. The flipper tabs are minimal, as you have probably noticed, but certainly very functional because the rear flipper tab is so high up. It's very easy. And the detent, I'm going to say, is light to... Yeah, it's pretty light detent, but it's about perfect. You can't almost fail this. What it does do, however, is bounce. Y'all know I hate bouncing knives. That's just like the bane of my existence is bouncy detents, and I love these. It's actually just a timing thing, and it's almost kind of cool. So if you let it drop and hold that button down, it feels funny the way it bounces because of that internal stop pin. And the detent track and everything on the inside. There's no detent ball, but the track for the plunge lock just has a different feel to it. It does certainly find its way home, and if you just get used to flipping it and timing that just right, you'll get it. I mean, I've sat here at my desk flipping this thing 100 times, and now I'm to the point where at least 80 out of 100 it's hitting home. And when it doesn't, all you have to do is tap it with that finger to lock it back in. But anyhow, it is what it is. It does tend to bounce a little bit because there's no real detent ball. It's all a function of the spring on this button lock. Right? All right, we'll take a look at that again only. This is a light switch only kind of flipper. Because there's no push button. If you push button it, you're going to end up halfway, and it's going to just catch on the top half. It does obviously have a front flipper as well. It is jimped all the way around. It is perfectly symmetrical in terms of the jimping on both the front and the back. This is a great knife if you just, some people are intimidated by front flippers and just want something they can practice on, but they don't want that to be the only mechanism that opens the knife, right? It's not as practical. It's great for fidgeting to me, but it's not like the most practical way to open a knife. I'd rather do that all day long. But I do enjoy when I'm just fidgeting. This is a great knife to practice your front flipping. Super easy to do. No big deal. Put your thumb right there and just ride it all the way around to the back, and it flips right out because it is a relatively light detent. That is certainly easy to do there. There are tiny little bearings we'll see on here. However, that being said, incredibly smooth. I mean, the action on this knife, those don't feel like, sometimes the bearings can feel like the balls are almost uneven and it's kind of a rough back and forth. This feels actually very smooth on these little itty bitty tiny bearings. This is pretty cool. Again, great texture on this button lock. You can use that to open or close it, if you get the right pattern down, right? There you go. Blade whack, this thing is not going anywhere at all. It is an absolute solid lockup, so you don't have anything to worry about that. Again, this is not a hard use knife. You should not be using this and probably won't be using this for real hard use work stuff. So absolutely no issues with that blade whatsoever. 14C28N is a great steel. Larry Thomas over at Knife Steel Nerds really rated this as probably the best all-around budget knife steel that is out there right now. And I think a lot of people in the industry do agree with that as well. It's not going to hold an edge as good as, even like a D2, although D2 holds a really good edge compared to most all other budget steels, but it is incredibly corrosion resistant. It's also very tough. So easy to sharpen. It's going to be a tough blade. It's going to be very corrosion resistant. So a nice, great for the money, everything you want there. Decent, actually, length blade on this thing, and you've got a fairly good straight edge portion for some straight cutting before you get to that belly. Nice, the tip is right in center line with that blade, no problem there. As far as, doing some draw cuts, which is what we do a lot of, opening packages. You can certainly use it in any of those different positions. There's no real jimping to speak of. You have the little bit of jimping that's on the flipper tabs, but I'll tell you, when that's down in the blade like that or in the handle, that's non-functional. That's not going to provide any grip at all. So that's something they could have done. It would have certainly affected the overall look and aesthetic of the knife to put jimping on the back of the blade. Now you kind of lose a little bit of that symmetry. I guess maybe that was the reason. And again, the design of this knife is really its #1 biggest feature, so I understand why they might not have done that. Not terrible branding. They do have the Vosteed name here. It's not quite in line with the plunge line, but anyhow, it's not as big as it could be and is on other knives. They put the name of the knife here, Corgi. Don't know why they needed to do that, 14C28N, in very tiny writing right down there in the corner. I would have almost rather had that 14C in place of Corgi up here. But, you know, it is what it is. They built a nice knife. I guess they get to put their name on it if they want. The blade centering came perfect, nicely in there. We already talked about the sharpening choil. They, you know, the factory grind, I mentioned this briefly, very thin in terms of the height of the grind. And what that usually means is it's probably about a 24 degree, which does make sense on a knife like this. First of all, I mean, again, I measured this at 14,000, so it doesn't get much thinner or slicier than that, even with, you know, a 24 degree angle on it. What that means is this is going to be pretty tough. And 14C is a very tough steel. So, you know, you put that higher degree angle on it instead of like an 18 degree, they've got it at 24 degrees. That's going to make a tougher tip. It's just going to last longer. You know, you can probably put it through a little bit more abuse before you're going to need to do any kind of real reprofiling or before you damage the blade in any particular way. Again, it did come very sharp out of the box. This is obviously the factory edge on it, and absolutely slicey all day long. No issues with that. You know, cuts really well right out of the box. So you can't ask for much more than that. All right, let's talk about the ergonomics. Ooh, you didn't even have the knife on camera. There's great camera work there, buddy. This is an incredibly neutral grip, I think would be the best way to explain it. It's just square lines. It's just a square rectangle for all intents and purposes. You can hold it forwards. You can hold it backwards. You could pinch grip it if you want. You could do some draw cuts with your finger out there. I mean, you can hold it in just about any position. However, the downside to that is there are no particular finger choils. There's nothing to lock your fingers in. So if I had to do any kind of hard poking type use with this thing, I'd be a little nervous about that. You don't want to have to poke that in too hard because it's going to be too easy for your fingers to slide right up off that handle onto that blade. So while its design is its strength, it also is a little bit of a liability in that regard. That's why I don't think this is really a hard use knife, right? However, again, the micarta itself is actually pretty darn grippy. Where you talked about the easy to get in just about any position ergonomically to hold it, hammer grips, long, thin, slicey blade. I will tell you, if you were choked up in a hammer grip, you could potentially be putting that finger right there. Right-handed people only, that could unlock that blade. So you would want to be careful when you're choked up in a hammer grip that you're not putting either your thumb or your finger on that lock mechanism. Ironically, for most people, at least for me, the soft meat of that part of your hand right there, no matter how hard I squeeze this knife, I cannot break that lock with just the kind of the fleshy part. So lefties don't really have the same problem on that righties do. I just thought that was interesting and worth pointing out. You got a nice, long, thin, slicey blade, great for opening packages, letters, boxes. You could easily tear down a few boxes, no problem with this thing all day long. It is a very fidgety knife. Again, nice, fun. If you're going to use the front flipper, I will give you another tip. You can't have your fingers up high on the back end, because what that'll do is now the back end, as that comes around the front, are going to rub on that finger. So to front flip it, keep your hand down a little bit lower, say down below that insert, the copper insert there, and now you can flip it all day long, no problem at all. It doesn't take much effort, and again, great knife if you just want to get into front flipping a knife that you don't have to front flip. Super one to learn on. Let's talk about the negatives. I mean, all the things that we have said already, you have to understand the purpose of this knife. You are making trade-offs for a beautiful, perfectly symmetrical, nice design, really well quality made knife. This is a knife, for going out on the town, for in a corporate office somewhere where you don't want to scare your cubicle neighbors, or if you're going to be around people who might get nervous around knives, this is the one you want to put in your pocket, right? Already talked about that. However, that being said, that makes it really not a hard use knife. It's not grippy enough for really hard poking or cutting or any hard use stuff where you potentially could slip around on this thing. There's no jimping or choils or anything like that. I'm also not, you know, we always give knives hell for T6s. I mean, come on, you got T8s everywhere. These screws are big enough, certainly, to put T6s or T8s into. So, you know, everybody gets hell about that. I guess the other thing you could say is they could have, it seems, imagined a way to move this pocket clip to a full deep carry position. They obviously have screws already at the top of this thing. Why wouldn't you just use one of those as your pocket clip screw, and now you've got a full deep carry pocket clip? Again, not a big deal. Doesn't make any difference to me personally, but you know, I had to find some things on this knife that are not perfect, right? So, and then the sharpening choil, that could have been a little bit deeper. Maybe the Vosteed name, that I actually noticed they have moved that already on the what is this knife here? I've ordered the raccoon knife. So you can see they've already made it smaller and moved it to a less obtrusive spot. And there's no name on the back of this knife either. And the blade steel name has gone here. So they've already made that change since this knife was built and designed. So that knife is newer than this one. So they've already fixed all that, right? All right, overall impression, this is a beautiful gentleman's type knife. We've already said that. It's classy. It's purpose built for that classy light duty work. People who love symmetry, who love design, you know, who want to carry it in all the places that we've talked about. However, it is truly a very functional knife. 14C is a great steel. It's going to be easy to sharpen, tough, corrosion resistant, reversible for lefties, very fidgety in all kinds of different positions. A great way to get into learning how to use a front flipper. Just well built, really good attention to quality and detail. You know, I call these some of the best, quote, affordable luxury knives that you can get. And that may sound silly, and I know people who buy nice, fancy, expensive knives will laugh at that. That's a-okay, man. I don't care. I get it. We're all at a different place in life. But for $60, which is what this thing is, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better quality made knife. And they have lots of them, you know. I'm reviewing lots of them. And it all just depends on what your usage is. But for that usage, you'd be hard-pressed to find a nicer one than this. So, yeah, absolutely, I would recommend this. Again, I'll put a link down below. Now, do you want to get inside and see what this thing is made of? Let's take a look at this, how this Trek lock is done. So, T8s, and here's the thing. You'll see this as it happens here. They did also put a thread locker on their screws. So I thought that was an awfully cool thing as well. You know, they're paying attention to those details. When you take this copper or whatever yours is tab off, you will notice the spring, that's what this is here, for your button lock comes out. So we want to make sure you hold on to that and don't let that just go flying across the room. I'll take off both the top and the bottom screws. Got it off here. You know what? Let's zoom in a little bit. Let's do this thing close up. Where's my T6 screws? We're going to get off this pocket clip. You do have to take off the pocket clip screws in order to get this top micarta layer off. Okay, so let's keep the pocket clip and its tiny little screws over here. Now I can take the micarta off. Okay, we have our steel underliners. Looks like those are, yep, good to go. Obviously, holes for lightning. Here's another piece here that's interesting. First of all, there's this little tiny T6 screw here we've got to take off, but this is, let me see if I can do this without, so you can actually see it. This is a collar that goes around that button lock. This is just one more little piece that contributes to the overall quality of the fit and finish and function of this knife. So this is your button lock here. The spring sits down into there up against that tab, as we said. But this little collar sits on around that just so your button is a little less wobbly, right? It just adds a little bit of extra quality to the action and finish. This is a tiny T6 screw. I really would love to see Vosteed come up with a larger version of that. That can be easily lost. Okay, now that I have that screw off, you can remove the liner. And now we get in to see this lock. So I didn't really mention the back spacer here. I was trying to figure out what this is. I believe this is G10. This does not, oh, sorry, I'm not even on camera. This does not appear to be micarta. I think this is a G10 back spacer. And let's see, did I take that on or off the wrong way? Sure did, didn't I? Okay, dude. How did you, oh, because it goes across here. That's why. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at this little blade and how this whole thing works. So first and foremost, you have these little tiny washers. This is a 4mm by 1mm washer. Bearings, sorry. I do know the difference between washers and bearings. Now I can't get it out. I actually took this all apart earlier and lubricated it, so I'm just going to leave it in there. You can see the open face is facing out away from the tang of the blade. But look how this thing is cut. So here's your stop pin as the blade spins around. It is a captive D-shaped pivot in here. And then this is your blade plunger, the plunger for the lock mechanism. I think you have to unscrew these. This does not come out of here. There's no position in which this comes out. So when the blade is open, it drops down into that hole right there. That's what holds the blade in the open position. Ooh, there's my bearing has come out. Thank you. I'm going to set you down. Sorry, you can see I lubricated it, so it's a little oily at the moment. No big deal there. And then in the closed position, here's your detent position there. So that sits down in there, and it's just carved just enough so that it can pop up out of there and slide around here and drop into the locked position when that blade is open. And that is enough to prevent that blade from, you can whack it, you saw me, pretty hard, and it doesn't move, doesn't come out. So pretty cool little design. Certainly not the first one to ever put like an internal track on a blade here. But still quite cool indeed for all of the other engineering and thought that went into the way this thing is designed. This is what they call their Trek lock, T-R-E-K. All right, let's put this thing back together. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and kill the video here just because y'all don't really, I mean, you know what? I'm going to do it in case there's somebody who just wants to see how this thing gets reassembled by some strange, for some reason, you know, you never know. But for the rest of you guys, thanks so much. Again, if you would hit that thumbs up, notification bell, that really helps guys like me. And let me know down in the comments what you think. If I missed anything, if any of y'all gotten one of these knives or these new Vosteeds, what do y'all think about the new Vosteeds that they're coming out with these days? These guys are pretty impressive, aren't they? Love to hear what y'all think always. So don't hesitate to hit me up there in the comments. But I'm going to go ahead and put this back together. You're welcome to hang out and watch me do it. Or you can bail out, and we'll see you on the next video. If you're leaving, thanks, man. Have a great day, and we will talk to you guys soon. Otherwise, for the rest of y'all, let's figure out how to put this thing back together. So this little collar, again, fits down in there. Maybe I should zoom in, let y'all see it a little closer up. All right, we had a screw. Do I have this on backwards? I do have this on backwards, don't I? Maybe y'all were already yelling that at me, like, hey, dude, you got your thing on backwards. Now I can't get this little collar out of here. There we go, because I got to have those tabs and those screws. So it does only go on one way. You know, if you're a dummy like me, you will figure that out fairly quickly. And I got to find that tiny little screw that goes into the frame here, into the liner, and that goes right in here. Do not try to over tighten that. And this is where having 𝗟𝗏𝗃 bits or really good high quality hex bits matters a lot. That little screw is easy to strip out, way too easy, to be honest with you. So I'd literally love to see them beef that up just a little bit. All right, now we can start putting this thing back together. I believe this is the screw for the rear end down here. This is a T8, sorry. I forget that I'm zoomed in, and so you can't see as much of my desktop as you usually can. So let's get this in. I'm not going to tighten this all the way down, just get it kind of in there loosely. Might as well go ahead and throw, our pocket clip on. See my knife blade coming out. Let's not do yourself any damage there. That goes down easy peasy. I do have some thread locker on this. Let me see if I can get this up close just so you can see. They put a little bit of thread locker on that screw as well. There's thread locker on the pivot screw. So I mean, like, these guys did a good job. They did a good job building a good quality knife. So I'm going to insert this spring just so it sits down there. It's now, hopefully you can see that. It's kind of tiny on the screen. And that tab smushes it down, so you got to hold it down with your finger while you get the pivot screw in there. If you can get the pivot screw in there. All right, T8 on the pivot screw here. Sorry, that is, I know you can't see that at all. My bad. All right, that's kind of tight, but definitely not even close. So let's work on that a little bit more. It's that thread locker that starts it feeling like you're almost done, and then you realize, oh no, I still got a long ways to go. So don't want to over tighten that too much. And let's go back now and get the back end body screw. Now we can come back out. Let's just do full screen because I'm so used to y'all being able to see my whole desktop here. There we go. Just do not over tighten, but don't under tighten either. None of these should be affected, but I'll check that real quick, make sure. All right. How do we flip and how does it close? All right, that all feels good. Now, what I'm wondering, did I put my bearings back in there? You know, you do this stuff on autopilot so many times, it's like, do I have any parts left over here? I think I put my bearing. It feels awfully smooth. Let's check. Definitely solid lockup. So yeah, we're back in business again. And yeah, that's nice and easy and smooth. The blade is bouncing. It just takes a little bit of timing practice. It can be a little bouncy, but once you get it, it's like, it's a practice thing. But, you know, that'd be another thing. It bounces a little easy. The spring, maybe I could tighten this spring up, and that might help keep that plunger popped up so that when it does reach this final position, it pops more forcefully into the lock, the, you know, quote, locked position, which is not really locked, obviously. We're back to dead center in the blade. That's always a good thing. So there you go. That's it. We'll stop it there. Thanks again for sticking with me for the extra fun part. And I love you guys. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. See ya.